It is the Doomsday Podcast, Mosley and Werder, in the aftermath of a Cowboys dominant 37-22 win over the hapless Jets. And Ed, I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on the Jets. It is amazing that they're like they're 0-5 now, and they've made it to 0-5 with zero takeaways. I mean, you almost could stumble into a takeaway. They still do
First
not
team in
have.
NFL history to be 0-5 with no takeaways. And the interesting thing was, and one of the things that made me kind of hesitate to think the Cowboys are going to win this game is that the previous four times teams were 0-4 with no takeaways, they won the fifth game and had multiple takeaways. So the Jets are uniquely bad.
they, they were uniquely prepared for this moment in NFL history. And, and the thing is, Ed, I know in the end they scored 22 points and they really had a lot of meaningless. I mean, that game was over at halftime. I do find it funny, Ed, as we'll get into a lot of these different things, but, Javonte Williams continues to be a big story for this season. And I think most Cowboys fans and everybody watching that game and the media and everything were like, okay, let's see Brandon Aubrey, see if they can, kick a field goal at the end of the half. And with however many seconds left, with 25 or 30 seconds left, they just hand the ball, they just hand it off up the middle to Javonte Williams, and he's gone. I mean, now they got him out at the 2-yard line, but it was very funny to see what everybody was thinking. Cowboys, could they get it points? Could they get a field goal? And then suddenly it's like, can they punch it in for a touchdown? But that's a pretty good strategy when you can just hand it off to a guy. And on this day, they didn't really need any of these other running backs. They worked Jaden Blue. He was finally active for a game despite wearing those designer cleats, which gave him blisters on his feet. And that was kind of funny. But Javonte Williams, Ed, you got to hand it to the Cowboys on that one. He looks like a legitimate starting running back and one of the better running backs in the league right now.
Well, Javonte Williams was the first player that the Cowboys signed in free agency this offseason. Brian Schottenheimer said it took very little time in training camp before they viewed him as a legitimate number one running back who could handle the majority of the carries. And he really has delivered. Today he had a career high 135 rushing yards. He had a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown. He had the longest run of his career, that 66-yarder you referred to, right before the half to set up an additional touchdown that really gave them a convincing lead going into halftime. And he's the first running back the Cowboys have had since Ezekiel Elliott and DeMarco Murray to score 5 touchdowns in the first 5 games of the season. They only scored 6 rushing touchdowns all last year. They already have 7, and he has 5.
All right, so wait, is this the Ryan Flanoy game? Is this the Javonte Williams game? Or is this the James Houston game? Which one would you choose?
I would say Flanoy was the bigger surprise, given that last year in his entire rookie season, I think he contributed 102 receiving yards, and in this game today, he had 114, I believe. It was almost like the Miles Austin out of nowhere emergence in my mind. I think that was most unexpected and was really necessary given that, the Cowboys didn't have CeeDee Lamb. They didn't have Kevontae Turpin. So Dak Prescott is without 4 starting offensive linemen going into this game. He's without 2 of his top 3 receivers, and he's being supported by the worst defense in football. And so for all we've said about how bad the Jets are, for the Cowboys to go in that circumstance and dominate the game, I think was really a statement for them.
All right, it is time to really get into it. The Doomsday Podcast on a dominant Cowboys win. They get to 500 after 5 games. Only the Cowboys.
Not easy to do.
2-2-1, and they get it done. Z-Man from Rogue Media Network, please play the music. right. And I almost made an exception. I almost thought, and of course we have our theme music and we love it. And we appreciate Ronnie Foss and his dedication to our show over the years, singer-songwriter. So I like that. But with Taylor Swift dropping her new album the other night, Ed, I thought maybe you would want something from the Taylor Swift album. There is some thought that, wait, when is Jerry? Oh, there's a Cowboys tie-in because there was a story this week that what if she comes to the Cowboys Thanksgiving game against the Chiefs? And Ed, as only Jerry could, he seemed very open to this. And I feel like if she wants to, they'll just hand her the stage. Hey, would you mind playing a couple songs while you're here?
Do it for the Salvation Army while you're here anyway.
So anyway, good to be with you. The Doomsday Podcast, Werder and Mosley together again. And Ed, this one, there's a lot of different ways to go with it. But and you mentioned Flanoy, and we talked about some of the folks in the opening. But I think here's where I want to begin. Given how awful the defense has been, and we talked about what's complimentary football. This has been uncomplimentary football. Best offense in the league, worst defense in the league. And we'll talk about some of the amazing things the offense overcame today in consideration of who was out on their offensive line. But Ed, let's start with the defense. After Eberflus, I think some people were so baffled by how bad they were in coverage and pass rush and everything. We're kind of like, is Eberflus going to be kind of like Mike Nolan? One and done, move him on out. And again, this is 1 week. And yes, it was against the Jets. But, Ed, I do think, you got to give some credit here. We've been beating them up pretty badly. And this was an excellent pass rush today. And it wasn't like, they had one good moment or a couple of good moments. The pass rush was good from the first series. The Jets came out, and you saw something different about the pass rush. You saw Fowler and Williams, and the Odigizua, and they were just, and Kenny Clark. They were really, really good at getting to the quarterback. And so, Ed, I think we start with a tip of the hat to the defense. Really good performance and again, the 22 points. A ton of that came late after the game had been decided.
Well, the Cowboys went into the game with Dak Prescott taking the snap with a lead only 15 times in their first 4 games. Only 3 teams had done that fewer times. So in this game, they got the early lead. They were able to play from ahead, and they were able to recreate, the circumstances with which they excelled under Dan Quinn. They were able to attack the quarterback. They knew Justin Fields has real limitations as a passer. They played against him last year. They won a road game in Pittsburgh with him starting at quarterback. The Steelers scored 17 points and the Cowboys won the game. He's a guy who's more of a threat as a runner than he is as a passer. He's never averaged more than 200 yards a game in his entire career. And so, that's where the Cowboys were weakest, was in coverage. And he's not the kind of guy to exploit that. And once the Cowboys had the lead and they were able to, not play the run quite so much, and they really were gashed a couple of times by Breece Hall in the running game. But James Houston had an outstanding. The Cowboys had 5 sacks. They went into the game with 4, so they more than doubled their season sack total. Odigizua had a sack inside. Houston had a sack. So Kenny Clark contributed. So yeah, they were able to get a lead. They were able to rush the passer against a quarterback who's really not much of a threat to beat you down the field, even though Garrett Wilson's one of the best receivers in football. But I think the biggest thing the defense did was Maris Leofau, after replacing Jack Sanborn at linebacker, was able to get that takeaway inside the Dallas 10. The Jets were seemingly about to score the tying touchdown, and Leofau punched it out. Sam Williams recovers the ball, and the Cowboys launched their second 90-yard touchdown drive of the first half and really took control of the game from that point on. So to me, that's where the defense made its biggest plays. Yeah, they generated consistent pressure, but the thing that was most important was they created a timely takeaway that the offense created into points that weren't expected under those circumstances.
Yeah, and after watching Sanborn's lack of tackling this year and his struggle with run fits. I mean, I don't like to see any player get injured, and I hope he's okay. I think he went into concussion protocol. But boy, getting Leofau involved, now he'll make some, poor plays. We saw him with a bad 15-yard penalty, unsportsmanlike conduct, or late hit penalty last week at a big moment. But the punch out, because Breece Hall had been hurting them. He was gashing them in the run game, but they were able to take advantage. One time they thought the ball had come out, but the ground caused it. And then on that play, and then I heard him say something interesting. They said something along the lines of, Eberflus believes that Maris Leofau is the best in the NFL at punching the ball out. And I'm like, well, probably they should be playing him a little bit.
I want to invest some snaps in a guy who can do that. A young guy who can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did. I was out at the start of this week, and Matt Eberflus did talk extensively about the lack of takeaways. The Cowboys went into this game -4, but the Jets were the worst team in football, -7 in turnover differential. And he did talk about the fact that, all the coaches, members of the coaching staff had seen that there were players punching at the football and that they had created movement, and it was just a matter of time before they benefited and actually got the ball out and made the play. And we saw that happen in a very important situation today against the Jets.
I would like, Ed, like a stat that was like who created the most movement during the season.
Well, you remember, in training camp, Schottenheimer said that I'm going to make a prediction and say, and I don't usually do that, but I'm going to predict this defense is going to be one of the best takeaway defenses in football. And they haven't been that at all. They only had 2 going into the game today, and they didn't get a lot of them, but they still got the one that was critically important and really was, to me, the pivotal moment in the game. And Eberflus, when we sat down and talked to him, he said they were going to be known for, stopping the run and taking the football away. And so we'll see if that materializes, but that was the expectation. And really, it hasn't been met even to this point. But that undoubtedly changed the direction of the game today.
And there was a big play early. Fowler tipped a ball that ended up being tipped off the Fox Skycam as well, and that may have robbed them a chance at a interception. But I thought Fowler, I was kind of looking at the stats after the game, and like Shamar James, Ed, ended up with 15 tackles in this game. I'm like, really? That's kind of crazy. Yeah, and but it was I thought Fowler played really well, and it didn't totally show up in some of the stats, but my gosh, I thought he was getting a ton of penetration. He was winning on inside pass. I mean, that was one of the things they bragged on the Jets, like continuity, bringing back all these offensive line, compared to the Cowboys offensive line. This is a good group. And the Cowboys just kind of embarrassed them all day. I mean, their guards had trouble. I thought their left tackle had trouble with the Cowboys. So the pass rush was, and that was a big thing. We haven't mentioned Micah's name yet, so I'll go ahead and do it. That was a big thing. Like, they're going to try to scheme it up. They're going to try to scheme up the pass rush. And we kind of have almost laughed about that. Like, okay, when's it going to happen? What's going to happen? And I guess today, for whatever reason, and it didn't seem like they had to blitz a lot. It's not like there were a ton of corner blitzes. I can't recall. I mean, they did some nice things on games where I thought I saw Houston kind of sweeping around and getting a sack that way, kind of looping around. So they certainly used some gains at the line of scrimmage. But Ed, I didn't feel like they had to use it, bring a bunch of extra rushers to generate the pass rush, which I think is another feather in Eberflus's cap, at least for this one game.
Well, and with when they traded Micah Parsons, I think they overestimated the remaining group of edge rushers and what they were capable of, and they had not performed to expectations. And then they lost, Nealon, their second round pick last year, who suffered a knee injury, became like the 11th or 12th guy on the injury report this week. He missed the game, and so they had to invest more snaps in guys like Houston. And Fowler did finally, play the way that he had played 2 years ago here, and the way he played last year, and having a career high 10 sacks with Washington. So But again, I think a big part of that is creating the right circumstances, and that was a result of getting an early lead for the first time, in a game, especially a game on the road.
Okay, and while he's been on assignment these last couple of weeks, we will have Stretch today. Ed, I know that excites you. Glenn Stretch Smith was his unique style and candor. Will be back on the Doomsday podcast, so we'll bring him back, and that'll be exciting. But Ed, I want to get right to it on the before we get to Stretch on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about Flanoy. A big game from him, and then you said something that made me laugh, Ed, earlier, something about Pickett. You're reminding me of that Steelers game, and I thought to myself, Pickens had to be happy to be on the other sideline, right, from Fields today. Not after playing with him and the Steelers and all these other quarterbacks. I think with the offense, Ed, we talk about a couple of things. The offensive line was good, but let's start with Dak Prescott, and I know you'll probably have some numbers that back this up, but seemingly he's playing as well, as efficient as really any quarterback in the league right now. And some of the usual suspects, like Lamar Jackson, Lamar didn't play today. Ravens got blown out. It now looks like the Ravens are just not going to arrive at the party this season. In fact, they fall to 1-4. They're in a bad shape. And so, there may be, again, for Dak to get involved in the MVP race, it's going to take the Cowboys getting on a little bit of a roll. They have an opportunity right now, but Ed, Dak is operating at a high level, and today without CeeDee Lamb, and he's been without CeeDee Lamb for a while, behind a very makeshift offensive line, 4 starters down. Dak puts up really good numbers, and he did something that kind of reminded me of Romo. Sometimes people say, why do people take up for Romo? Why do they hate Dak? Well, you and I don't really get into that. But one of the things Romo did was he elevated sort of lesser players that we didn't really know about, right? LaRon Robinson, Miles,
Austin.
Miles Austin. He elevated him to great new heights. And at least for this one game, Ryan Flanoy stepped up and had a huge game. So big day for Dak Prescott, Ed.
Yeah. The Cowboys went into this game without CeeDee Lamb, without Kevontae Turpin at wide receiver, without their left tackle Tyler Guyton, without their left guard Tyler Smith, without their right guard Tyler Booker, without their center Cooper Beebe. And, so he, instead of having an offensive line to protect him against what they thought was a pretty good Jets front and a front that they expected was really going to load the box, that's what Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks both do. They load the box to stop the run and get a lot of people around the line of scrimmage to create confusion about who's rushing and who's not. So instead of an offensive line that, features 3 first-round draft picks as normal, he's playing with an offensive line that has 3 undrafted free agents, a 6th-round pick, and a 7th-round pick, and again, without 2 of his top 3 wide receivers, and yet, and they never won a game since drafting CeeDee Lamb that CeeDee Lamb didn't play in. They're 0-2-1. And in the last 2 weeks, without CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, 77 points, 559 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, completing 71% of his passes. And Brian Schottenheimer said after the game, he thinks he's one of the best players in the league, playing with a ton of confidence. And that's pretty much what Dak said this week at the Star, was, he's really feels comfortable with the way that Schottenheimer's calling plays, the aggressive style, and we saw it before the half, was a great example of Schottenheimer's aggressiveness. And maybe he's giving the Cowboys an advantage as a play caller that he didn't have under Mike McCarthy or Jason Garrett. Sure seems to be the case. But the Cowboys in the last 4 weeks have scored 40 points, 31 points, 40 points, 37 points. Pretty remarkable. And then, the Jets, despite being matched up against this makeshift Cowboys offensive line, they only had 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, 0 sacks. While the Cowboys are missing 4 of their 5 starters. And Dak did what he always does against the blitz. He had 4 touchdown passes in the game, and 3 of them were against the blitz. It's the first time since 2021 that he's had 3 touchdown passes when blitzed in a single game.
Yeah, I think the biggest, the scary moment of the day was late. He was wanting to go downfield when they had the game in hand, and 44 for the Jets hit him. I mean, that was a pretty big hit, and Dak jumped up. And hey, by the way, he's doing something, Ed, that we thought was kind of out of his game at this point in his career, and we used to talk about a lot. He is running at times, and he's doing it with some success. And I mean, again, he's not going to turn into Lamar Jackson or something, but I think his willingness to do that, even on his little quarterback sneak, did you see him kind of come racing across the line there? It wasn't like the tush push. It was like he called it and he jumped over the line of scrimmage. So I think he's moving well. He's moving in the pocket really well. What you said that resonates with me too, Ed, is with that mate, though you read out who was missing. Because of that, he had that clock going, like ball's got to get out, ball's got to get out, ball's got to get out. And he just knew constantly where he was going, and whether that was to Ferguson or Schoonmaker or whoever was out there. And to your point about Shoddy, Ed, he's like, those aren't always just natural screens, are they? I mean, okay, think about that one play. It's like 3rd and 10. That's not generally a time to go to Lipke, right? Let's get it to our fullback in space. Yet they did it, and Ferguson's out there blocking for him, and it worked. They got the first down. So I think that's pretty creative, from a play calling standpoint. And I do think, Ed, he's playing at an extremely, high rate right now.
Well, what was interesting, I asked him this week out there, he said that you're really throwing against the rush, not against the coverage in his mind at this point in his career. And, he said that he was not really going to let the fact that he had all these backup offensive linemen really affect his mental clock. He wasn't going to get sped up in the game unless the Jets proved that needed to happen. And so you talked about the quick game. He emphasized it last week because of the Packers pass rush was one of the best in football. And so this is 2 weeks in a row we've seen him mitigate a strong pass rush or seemingly a deficit on the offensive line. And you mentioned his running ability. I mean, well, let me make one more point about the offensive line. He said after the game today that the thing he told these young offensive linemen who were starting for the first time was, hey, you're doing what I did. Like, I was ready for my opportunity, when I got it in 2016, when Tony Romo unexpectedly went down, in the preseason. And I took over, and I was ready for it. I embraced the challenge, and we went 13-3, won the division, went to the playoffs. So if there's anybody who knows what it's like to be put in a position like that, it's me. And so I think he created a lot of confidence in those guys in that way. And then you mentioned the final point I want to make about Dak, his running ability. At 32, coming off, two injuries in the last 5 years that shortened his season, required surgery. He's been remarkably mobile, not just within the pocket, but getting down the field for gains and scoring touchdowns. He actually outrushed Fields in this game today. Fields is one of 3 quarterbacks in NFL history who's run for 1,000 yards in a season. And today, Dak had 29 rushing yards, and Fields, speaking about how well the defense contained him, he only had 27. So that says a lot about what Dak Prescott's capable of, and it says how well the Cowboys defense wound up, maintaining the rush lanes and the rush lane integrity and spying the quarterback to prevent him from taking over the game as a runner, something they didn't do week 1 on the road in Philly when Jalen Hurts ran for 5 first downs and 2 touchdowns on scrambles. Going into this game, Justin Fields was the number 2 rushing quarterback in the league behind, by 1 yard, Jalen Hurts.
Wow. All right, that's a good one. And I do remember him sprinting off. Ed, it's like WFAA will not usually allow you and Stretch to appear in the same, area. And so it's rare to see you guys together. But we have a treat for everyone. A man who's been on assignment these last 2 weeks, Ed, is going to jump on with the 2 of us right now, So Ed, if there's something you've been kind of wanting to ask Stretch about, something you saw today, please be ready to do that.
Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. You can play with as little as $1. Download the app today and sign up with promo code Doomsday to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code DOOMSDAY. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog, make picks, win money. Must be 18 and up, 19 and up in Alabama, Nebraska 19 and up, and in Colorado for some games, 21 and up in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and must be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details.
Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach, joining the Doomsday podcast right now. Oh, there he is.
He's in his man cave.
He's in the man cave. Looks like he may have a hoodie on.
He's already watched the film. He's watched the All-22, no doubt.
He's had time. Yes, we've given him all kinds of time. Stretch, welcome back to Doomsday. Our people have demanded that you return, and I tried to navigate us through a couple of weeks without you, and it didn't sit too well with our loyal audience.
It was every bit as unanimous as the Micah Parsons trade.
Well, hey, good to be back, and it's good to see Ed still wanting to audition to be down at the Improv, and that, you know what, that's a good place to be. I mean,
hey, I got a gig at 6 o'clock in the morning after game stretch. Come on, I don't need any more work.
That's the best place to be at 6 a.m. You don't get into all that traffic.
That's right. And then of course Stretch will be on Sports Special with Joe Trahan this very evening, doing the late night shift. Okay, Stretch, wanted to get your take. First of all, the quarterback continues to play really well, but you love looking at the O-line and evaluating that. That's pretty rare that you have to go to four backups. Only starter you have is the right tackle, and they took him out of that last game, and so it was almost a full set change out there, and yet they were able to run the ball with great success, 180 yards, and then they blocked it up for Dak for the most part. They got the ball out pretty quickly. What'd you think about that group meshing with Dak in the run game?
Well, I mean, before we talk about the group, this is a time that I think you got to say thank God for preseason football. I mean, because that's where these guys got that opportunity. They got their chance to say, hey, during preseason, we're going to look at somebody else that's got a different helmet on. We're going to work on our craft a little bit. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to Adams and to how they've coached this offensive line. They've taken a different approach from a running game.
Riley.
Yeah, from a running game standpoint, they take good angles. They understand what they're doing. I mean, you saw Bass multiple times, I thought, turn to protection. So they're on the same page with an understanding of what to do, of how to do it. And there's something to be said for understanding angles and knowing how to take angles in football. And so I thought it was awesome to see that. And you got a running back who's running really hard. I mean, he finishes – the best run he made was a 1.5 yard run where he makes about 5 guys miss and just sticks it in there for a first down. So right now, they have a lot of confidence. You can tell there's something coming out of the offensive line room. And I don't go around there, but I'm sure that they feel like, you know what, we can play with anybody. And they went out there and showed it today. I'm not going to come on here and style point a win that it's just the Jets or it's whoever. Hey, Ed will tell you this, it's hard to win in the National Football League, and I don't give a crap who you're playing. So guess what? The fact that they played together and understood what they were trying to do and went out and attacked it, I thought speaks volumes for how they're being taught and what they're being, quite frankly, coached to do.
How different does the running game look to you compared to the McCarthy years?
Well, what I see is multiple opportunities for Williams and I'll go back early in the year when Miles Sanders got on the safety. Maybe it was at Philadelphia that he got caught from behind. I don't know how many times I've seen the back get one-on-one with the safety and make the safety miss. I mean, both of them made the safety miss today. They were playing, they were playing too high right before the half, and at 18 yards, well, like anybody else, normally you're playing that at about 14 yards as a safety. You come down to support the run from 18 yards, you take not a great angle, and then Williams makes him miss, and it's off to the races. So there's a lot of it that is a hat on a hat mentality, and it feels different, Ed, and it especially feels different because I don't know how, I want to say 6 or 7 times they played that, they put Lipke in there as a fullback and a 2-back look. And as far as yards, average yards that they're gaining with a 2-back look, I mean, it looked like the 90s Cowboys when they were, running double dive and running ISO up in there and getting a hat on a hat and being able to be productive in all of those scenarios. So to me, Mike Solari was here forever. He's a heck of an offensive line coach. I'm not going to say anything different about that. I'm going to say that sometimes a fresh voice in a room and a different angle and maybe a little different technique may help certain guys.
And the guys you were talking about are Clayton Adams, who's the offensive coordinator, but not the play caller. That's Schottenheimer. He came over from the Cardinals, where they had one of the most effective and creative running games in the league. And then Connor Riley, they hired from Kansas State, who would coach the starting center.
Right. And again, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ed.
Oh, Ed was just saying, Cooper Beebe, but go ahead.
No. Yeah, you make great points, Ed. I mean, that's right. I mean, comfort and understanding. And I think the thing that what in the past we've seen Hudson Houck have to come in kind of mid-season and not necessarily, be meshed with what they were teaching. So I thought really good stuff there in all of that in all of that arena.
All right, and then Stretch and Ed left us just for a second there. Oh, Ed's back. Ed was just frozen.
I had to use one of my timeouts.
We had to put Ed in timeout, but
Ed, you know what I'm talking about when they brought Hudson Houck back in here and they had Mark Colombo, and I don't know if they were on the same page with what they were teaching. And at one time they had the Cincinnati line coach that they brought in, Jason, had gotten rid of him. I'm drawing a blank with his name. He was
Paul something.
Paul, he was a disciple of the guy that was at Cincinnati and Jim McNally. Anyway, you can tell they're all on the same page, and I'm saying it feels like they're teaching the same thing, and they're having incredible success with what they're doing with this offensive line, because obviously that's where it all starts. And then the quarterback having the confidence in those guys.
All right, and Stretch, I wanted to go real quick over to the other side of the ball, and on defense, they actually had 5 sacks. They came into the game with only 4 all season, and it didn't seem like they had to blitz a lot to generate it. We had heard them talk about, hey, we're going to scheme it up this year. what did you see from that defensive line? Why do you think they were able to generate so much of a pass rush against what was a decent offensive line that had, quite a few starters returning?
Yeah, what I'm going to start by saying is that I think one of the sacks came on a big double TE where he looped all the way around. And the reason that he was able to get all the way around there was because I might have to look at my notes here, but because of the coverage. What I saw on a first look of this was a secondary that finally played with so much better leverage than maybe anything that I've seen all year. I think the most frustrating thing for me was to go back a week ago in a 40-40 tie when Romeo Doubs lines up +3 from the bottom of the numbers at the 4-yard line. And where do you think he's going to go? And he just jogs the slant inside for a touchdown. Today, I saw guys come up, play better press coverage, play a little more handsy in that 5-yard area, and then be able to play some leverage down the field. I never would have imagined that you'd get in a situation where you'd be talking about the smallest things of leverage with what you want your secondary to do. However, guess what? They played with really good leverage today, and I thought that helped the pass rush get home. I thought that created Fields a second to kind of have to hold the ball because guys were getting rerouted. They weren't letting guys run through the middle of the defense. That's not taking anything away from the defensive line and the job that they did. I'm saying as a unit, the secondary played much better. And then when you saw Sanborn go out, I thought you got a little more, almost a little more
athletic,
faster at that position. Correct. Quicker at that position. And that's the other thing that's hurt them is the coordination of the second level with what they're wanting to do in the secondary. So their drops were a little better. They were a little more sound with what they wanted to do. So I have to give Matt Eberflus a lot of credit because now he did try to doke-yoke them early in the game with a CFL look where they had 12 out there. But you know what? They adjusted and got it. And it felt like they finally got the secondary on the same page with what they were wanting to do with the second level guys. And I never root for anybody to go out, but I mean, Sanborn goes out and then Leopold punches the ball out of Hall. And, we can obviously talk specifically about that, but you're asking me about the defensive line, and I have to give credit to the secondary because the secondary did a better job in coverage than I've seen them all year. And I think that's what helped lead to some guys getting home.
And they followed the advice of Buffalo, former first-round pick Kyer Elam was benched today. He had to come in when Bland got hurt, but he would not start the game. Stretch, that was fun, man. A lot of times late games, you and Ed we're all on different schedules, so I don't always get to have y'all on together. Y'all do great work, both of you, for WFAA. So thank you, man. We'll be watching tonight, and we'll be watching Ed early tomorrow morning. There on WFAA. Thank you for doing this, sir.
Hey, no problem. Sorry to bother both of you today.
Hold down the night shift at WFAA, buddy. I'll be there in the morning.
It's right. Leave Ed some snacks. Leave him some like breakfast items or something.
I hang out in that green room right there. If you could leave me a nice fresh cup of coffee and maybe a bagel or something, be nice.
I think I'm gonna leave you a Mento just so you're fresh.
Not a bad idea.
See you guys.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith on the Doomsday Podcast. So, Ed, good to have him back. I thought there have been moments I thought I might lose you and Stretch. But I'm glad to have you both today in one place. All right, Ed. Good win for the Cowboys, 37-22. I did listen to a little bit of Brad Sham today. And at some point, Brad was not pleased that he thought the Cowboys had bogged down on offense in the second half. And even with a 30-6 lead, he was not real pleased with the way the offense was looking. But I think I think Cowboys have to be very happy with a 37-22 road win against the Jets as they get ready for the Panthers now.
Yeah, and I wanted to say one more guy who deserved to be pointed out, and he didn't have a huge statistical game, but George Pickens. You mentioned him earlier. Without CeeDee Lamb, he's taken on the additional responsibility as the number one receiver in the offense. It's a role he had in Pittsburgh, but he beat Sauce Gardner, one of the best cover corners in football, down the field. They hand fought all the way down the field. He still did a great job tracking the ball for that 43-yard touchdown catch from Dak Prescott that put them over 30 points in the game and kind of sealed the whole thing. And, he's drawing more coverage, but to beat that guy the way he did in that moment, I thought was pretty significant. And if you look at the impact he's had, this is one of the best trades the Cowboys have made. Maybe the best free agent signing they've made in recent years, other than Brandon Aubrey, was Javonte Williams. But the best trade they've made might be George Pickens, especially playing without CeeDee Lamb. Now they haven't lost without, even though CeeDee Lamb's been out, they haven't lost yet in his absence. They tied once, and they won today. And he's got matched his career high for touchdowns with 5 already. And in Pittsburgh, he never had back-to-back games with a touchdown. He's scored a touchdown in 4 straight games in Dallas so far.
All right, Ed. Next is I'm glad you brought that up. But next is it's the Panthers.
Yeah.
Cowboys have had success against the Panthers as
who hasn't
in this last season, right?
They're one of the worst teams in football over time.
Yeah, although they did come back and have a big victory today.
And they beat Atlanta 30-0 2 weeks ago.
And got beat by they're a weird team to know because they got crushed by the Patriots. Today we're way down against the Dolphins and came back and won that game 27-24. So you never know what Surfer and the Panthers will do. But Ed, and I think it was good for the Cowboys also. The Eagles, who had been on the verge of losing for several weeks, finally did lose to Denver. And then the Giants lose to New Orleans, even with, Jackson Dart went in there, threw for a couple of touchdowns, but they did get beat, I believe, 26-14. So as we record this, the Commanders and the Chargers are at it, and we'll.
So as I told you before we started, in summation for the day, in terms of the division, with the Eagles and Giants both losing, the Cowboys are further from the bottom and closer to the top.
That is true, and Ed, you will be well rested for tomorrow's appearance. For Ed Werder and Matt Mosley and Glenn Stretch Smith. This is in Rogue Media Network. Our man, Zach Burke. This has been the Doomsday Podcast. We will see you next Sunday to react to Cowboys and Panthers.
We are Rogue Media Sports.